This inaugural forum is uniting Africa's business and industry leaders with philanthropists, refugee changemakers and the public sector to design market-based approaches to leverage the potential and power of the 36 million solutions who are forcibly displaced across the African continent. Sarah Chan is the Toronto Raptors Africa Scouting Manager. She speaks of her experience as a refugee whose family relocated from South Sudan. She believes that having such conversations is the starting point of creating solutions for the continent's challenge of refugees and displaced people.
Every refugee's life is bound to have some issues. Whenever war breaks out, it is merciless. I hope for every child and youth on the continent to get opportunities, to be able to access quality education, because with that you are empowering the person to be self-reliant, to be sustainable in this life, and it gives them dignity.
36 million solutions. The theme for this forum seeks to ensure that every person forced to flee their home because of violence, persecution or conflict in Africa has the support, resources and tools to rebuild their lives through convening, among other institutions, the private sector to forge a way forward for this challenge.
Private sector has a lot of opportunity to engage in communities of forced displacement. These are refugee hosting communities as well as areas of internally displaced persons. And the way that I see it, these communities are just like any other. They have consumers, they have employees, there are entrepreneurs. When we engage these communities that just by chance are people of forced displacement, we actually can see tremendous solutions within these communities themselves. And when we engage the private sector, we can find durable, sustainable solutions for some of our continent's most challenging needs.
We believe private sector investment and host communities can be a game changer. The potential of private actors in terms of financial and in-kind support, the provision of technical expertise, partnerships to enable enhanced connectivity, clean energy, and expanded employment opportunities for refugees and host communities, including through advocacy and investment. The potential is enormous, even limitless. In partnership with the private sector, we can shift towards market-based approaches to increase the economic productivity of refugees and their hosts, building resilience and self-reliance.
Rwanda is home to over 127,000 refugees, 10% of whom live in the urban setting, while 90% are settled in 5 different refugee camps across the country. While officially opening this forum this Wednesday, the Prime Minister, Dr Edouard Ngirente, reiterated Rwanda's commitment to the well-being of refugees and forcibly displaced people in Rwanda.
Rwanda will therefore continue to play its role by ensuring refugee protection, security, and socio-economic inclusion. For example, all refugees aged 16 years and above, like any other Rwandan, have been issued with ID card to enable them get access to various services. In Rwanda's education policy, access to quality education for all Rwandans and Rwandan residents is our priority. Today, there are 55,000 refugee students enrolled in various education levels, from early childhood to primary through secondary schools. We have also more than 500 refugees in different universities under several scholarship programs. Regarding the access to health care, in collaboration with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, all camp-based refugees receive health care services at no cost. Those settled in urban areas are enrolled in the National Community-Based Health Insurance Scheme, known as Mutuelle de Santé.
Africa currently hosts the highest number of people forced to flee in the world, nearly 36 million people out of the more than 84 million people forced to flee due to conflict, violence, persecution, and climate change.
Good morning, everyone.
Now, before we move on from this forum, as we've seen in the previous story, this forum is convening under the banner of 36 million solutions. But what does that really mean? In an exclusive interview with RBA, the Deputy High Commissioner of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Kelly Clements, talks to us about, among other things, how the forum came about and the need for broader approaches beyond UNHCR's traditional humanitarian responses. Take a look.
Don't think it's any secret that there are many reasons right now why people are being displaced. War, persecution, climate factors, even other reasons for people to move. And the 36 million are those that are forcibly displaced from their homes. And what we were trying to do here in Kigali, Rwanda, is to try to bring together a number of actors who can help us find solutions for that displacement. And the private sector, business, becomes a very important part of that conversation, because there are steps that governments can take, and the government of Rwanda has taken a number. There are steps that we as the UN Refugee Agency can take with partners to help to assist, to protect, to aid. But business, and seeing that people that come to this country seeking protection, seeking asylum, have contributions to make to the economy to be able to support themselves, it's a really powerful, powerful message. So we have a conversation going in the forum to talk about how the private sector can contribute to the solutions for these 36 million.
Absolutely. We've seen humanitarian organizations such as the UNHCR before being involved in supporting displaced populations, but why is it different this time? Why do you believe for a broadened approach that is needed to address the challenge of forced displacement?
Well, one, the need. We, on the continent, we have 3 times as many people who are displaced in the last 10 years, 3 times. So that's a large number of people to find solutions for. Second, we have the Compact for Refugees that was adopted by the New York Declaration in 2016 by all the member states of the UN. And Rwanda was an important part of that conversation, and the many governments and countries in Africa, as being hosts for refugees for a very long time, saw that we needed to take a different approach to displacement, one that isn't just a humanitarian solution, but it's humanitarian, it's development, it's political in terms of the policy environment that governments set, and it's the contribution from the rest of society, from business, from civil society, and from the refugees, of course, themselves. So we've had now that compact, which talks about inclusion and not keeping refugees over here and host communities here because they're living together. So how is it that we can support both hosts and the refugees in a different way? So we think it's a very different conversation now, and we see much interest in terms of trying to be part of that solution.
And what is your most critical concern in solving the issue of forced displacement?
Well, at its root, of course, it's political in terms of solutions, trying to bring parties together to make it possible for people to live safely and in dignity in their home communities, or make it possible to find those solutions so that they can return voluntarily. But there are a number of reasons that people move in terms of displacement, and that, I think, will require a number of solutions from all of us. Until the conditions are right for people to go home, they need to find other ways to support themselves, their families, put their kids in school, to be able to find health care. I mean, we've seen, for example, the last 2 years with the pandemic, we can't just address issues related to nationals of our countries, but we also have to look at those coming from other countries to be able to protect all. And this is something that I think is a very powerful message.
Speak to us about Rwanda's role in finding solutions to forced displacement and how the UNHCR collaborates with the Rwandan government.
Well, Rwanda's been a very important host for refugees now for many years, 20 years, 2 decades. And some of the refugees we've met this week in Rwanda have been here themselves for nearly a generation. Rwanda has adopted and has made clear that its policies will be very progressive in terms of inclusion. Makes it possible for refugees to be able to work, for kids to be able to be enrolled in schools, either schools that we build in refugee communities or those that we build in host communities. And really what Rwanda is trying to do is not to make distinctions, to be able to educate all children, to be able to provide health care to all people, regardless of whether you're a refugee or you're a Rwandan citizen. And this is a very powerful message, and it's a very important message. There were several pledges that the Rwandan government made at the Global Refugee Forum in 2019, and those pledges we now see coming to fruition, including in our visit here this week. I was most impressed. And we've seen as well this attracting more investment to Rwanda. We've seen that entrepreneurs and business have seen the economic benefits, but also the moral reasons for contributing and being able to support Rwanda in taking these really progressive steps.
Absolutely. As we wind up, what are your expectations from this two-day forum?
So we're having a conversation, and we're having a conversation with some in the audience that know a lot about displacement and refugees, and some that don't know a lot. So it's really trying to have a better appreciation of both the context that we're operating in and what the private sector can do to contribute, to be able to add value, expertise, jobs, other ways that we can, and advocacy, the messaging, changing the narrative that refugees are not recipients of aid. They can be contributors to a community. So our hope from this is that we have a whole lot more businesses and individuals and others that want to help us find solutions for 36 million people, that it's the beginning of a conversation, the beginning of even deeper partnerships with the private sector.